And during the history of connecting, a lot of our customers started to ask what is the best ways for them to communicate with their customers, communicate with their teams, and that's when we decided to build a communication tool. So Rocket.Chat was this communication component of the side project to build a communication tool for connecting.
Wonderful. And then, um, because customers, basically the idea was to actually have a chat platform for customers to be able to chat with, like talk with each other outside of email, or and we were all
Yeah,
frustrated
they
about
wanted
email.
to have, yeah, they wanted to have that widget on the website or maybe connect to Facebook, but our understanding was always like, okay, if I'm talking to a customer on the website, but what if they ask me something that I don't know, but I know that a colleague know? I'm gonna have to talk to a colleague, or maybe invite a colleague to the conversation so he can give the best answer to the customer. So we understood that we need to make a very good tool to communicate with my customer, but also at the same time a very good tool to communicate with my team. And all that we've seen on the market at that point was doing one or the other. You either had like Zopping or Olark or all this stuff, which is a good communication tool to talk to your customer, or you have Slack or HipChat. There was a good tool to communicate to your colleagues, to your team. But we always thought like, why those two things cannot be on the same place? Why do I have different tools to talk to different people? And that became the whole value of Rocket Chat, that you should have one tool for communication and not just keep jumping from different tools to talk to different people.
That's great. Well, and such an important problem that I think what fascinated me when how we ended up getting connected, right? Like I met Vanessa Larco, right, like at NEA when she was still at Twilio. I was at SendGrid at a Bessemer event. That was an investor that we've had together. And then and she was like, "Hey, I got this." It's so interesting how I truly believe in like Carl Jung's like theory of like synchronicity, because the night that that we had that she actually talked about us potentially coming in, to partner, and it was it was what I think Silicon Valley Bank was organizing this dinner in San Francisco. And it was for like the Latin Americans, like Latino stuff, and I hate that shit, like, because for me it's basically kind of like I never want to play the minority card. My card is a card of like I'm a good investor that provides great returns
Yeah,
for my LPs and finds badass founders, men and women, and that's it. Like it doesn't matter where I am from, what's my name, or all of that stuff. I really don't like any of that rhetoric. I think it's actually anti-American, in my opinion. Because of the whole self-reliance that this gorgeous nation has. But I went to the dinner anyway, and then that's how we ended up. Because she grew up in Miami, right? Like daughter of Colombians, and I didn't even know that. But I think what truly connected me with the opportunity of us partnering was the this precise pain that I've always felt. Having been a part of one of the most successful email companies in the world with SendGrid, and also before that, before the iPhone came out, being a part of Nimbus, which was like a chat app built on top of XMPP, and all these limitations across protocols that even when they are open and adopted, the level of innovation that actually ends up happening on the technology is quite low, right? If you look at like email is slow, it's very old, but no
yep.
one can. We can't get it out because it's like, how are you going to stop using HTTP or DNS or SMTP? You just don't, right? So companies like Superhuman, for instance, for email, right? They'll build this gorgeous looking design, and it's worth hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, by just improving the power of this protocol that flows everywhere. So when you presented this vision for omni-channel seamless communication across the board, where you become almost like the switcher, the router for inter-protocol communication, I was very impressed. Because I was, it was as if I've been looking for something like this for a long time.
And it's almost like when you look back and you look at it, I like ideas that they look obvious once you realize and you get to this point where you understand what you're up to. You're like, God, man, that's so obvious. That's so such a needed solution. And I feel like sometimes if I talk to people and tell them, look, on email, you imagine if you were going to send an email to someone at Hotmail, you had to have it in a Hotmail account, and then you want to send someone email to someone in Gmail, you're gonna have to create a Gmail account to send someone to Gmail, and then if someone have a AOL account, you have to create an AOL account to send an email to an AOL account. That would be crazy, right? It's like everybody can agree. Like, yeah, that would be fucking crazy. That defeats the point. It's like, but what do we? Why do we accept such a thing for chat, for messaging? Like, why we were convinced that that's okay, that I need a Slack account and a Teams account and a Telegram and a WhatsApp and a, like, it's and then we're like, yeah, this is fucking crazy. Like, this is not be the world we live in. It's not. This is maybe good for the companies, but it's terrible for the users, right? So everybody agrees that it's a massive problem. But how do you address it? How do you even start to address such a problem? Um and we believe like the only way possible is with an open technology. No single company on their own will be able to build the bridges and make the this shift with a closed product. But that, because that is by definition the problem itself, then all those technologies are closed. And the reason why email is universal, because it's an open technology. Then lies the challenge on how there is no one single company behind email. Like, no one owns email, or do you don't have a email Inc., right, or something like this. But there's a lot of profitable email companies. You've worked in one of the most profitable one, and Microsoft made a lot of money with email. Google with email. Like, there's so many. So it becomes a harder challenge on how do you create a business that is more of an ecosystem than just trying to sell a solution,
That
right?
yes,
How,
definitely,
and
definitely.
I think that's the challenging part, but it's so much more powerful to build an
Yes,
ecosystem
yes.
than trying to just sell a solution.
One, I love. I mean, that metaphor of open protocols. It reminds me of when I was still at Funders Club, and we were very early in crypto, right? We were seed investors in Coinbase. We invested in Chainalysis and Shapeshift and Ripio. This is 6 years ago. Basically, started working with crypto, and Bitcoin was $30. Ethereum was 15 cents, and it's fascinating just to see all the conversations right now about the DeFi, and it was this relationship that I've had with email and with SMTP, plus understanding the nature of the Byzantine general's problem that made me realize I was like, holy shit, like crypto is by far as big, if not bigger, than the internet itself, because we've always needed some sort of like financial means of transacting and rewarding each other with some sort of like karma like setup. But we all have to believe that money has some sort of value in order for money to work, unless you have this decentralized ledger that is the value that proves that the value exists or the transaction exists in. Um, and you can print more. You can, and I was thinking about that and how that applies, right? Like the decentralization of money or finance, or just basically authentication as a whole, and how can that be applied to messaging, meaning towards what you're talking about with the need of having an open framework. It's the only way for that to actually propel, because no single company can own that. It would be a bug in the system, right?
Yeah, it's almost like I like to think that we are on the right side of history. When you look about how things evolve on the internet, they always tend to distribute it, to with all the protocols. The whole uh, 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 fundamental characteristic of the internet was about even the protocol, right? The IP is about creating a network that is can find its way and have multiple nodes all connecting to each other, and there's no single point of failure. There's no single gatekeeper. So I think if that's the fundamental characteristic about the internet, how things are built, and then email becomes the same thing. The websites are built on the same thing. It's like the whole routing mechanism and DNS. Everything is built to be distributed, to have multiple players and multiple no single point of failure. You have multiple nodes that serve the technology. Is only, and then I think there is a little bit of a pendulum that sometimes innovation, those systems, and because there's so many people involved, maybe the innovation gets becomes lower because there's so many moving parts. There's so many people using that. That's why email became a slow way to communicate, although it's digital, because it didn't evolve enough because there was no driver for innovation or someone leading it in a way that a startup can try different things, can change designs, can try out, and if it works, because email cannot be changed overnight. All the process of changing a protocol that is open is hard. So there is this gap where it looks like companies will take advantage of this gap, build proprietary solutions to those problems because they can try out fast and proliferate different solutions. And then eventually, the big arch of history will build the open version of that, and then become the standard and universalize that, become universal.
Well, but how
And
how how can that actually happen in a practical way? Because, for instance, I've seen, right, like, I remember this company I saw at YC. I think Excel invested in them, called Station, and there are many others where just, oh, we'll figure this at the client. We'll figure this out at the client level. I'll give you a client that gives you then, almost like an iframe imagery reproduction of like your 10 chats. And then, all you get to do is then, instead of browsing different tabs or opening multiple apps, it's one app, but all the inboxes, like, they're just all separate, right? So that's one approach, and then you have the approach of like beautiful design, sophistication, keyboard shortcuts of superhuman. So it's like, oh, I'll make your just email better, or the mix max approach, or like things that would like be on your email, and then like your Gmail becomes this slow, almost like a Christmas tree with so many different. It's like it's this horrible thing. And I am a Mixmax paid customer as well as Superhuman, so it's not a criticism. I think that both of those companies are great, but my question to you though, as probably you think about this way more than I do, so right, like, what is the like? Do you think that Rocket.Chat eventually is that switcher in order for you to actually first convert the protocols, right? So if you get like, let's say SMTP, you can push out some sort of other protocol, and then over time, as you become the switcher, maybe there's this ability of having a different protocol that can be slowly, through open source, adopted by other people. Just like what would be the master plan in your view towards this sophisticated, unified way of of communicating?
and I think you on your question, you described a good portion of what we think is the master plan. Is one, if you solve this only on the client level, you you didn't solve the big part of the problem, which is the decentralization of communication, right? You didn't solve um, how you do discovery of the other users properly, or even bring users together into the same conversation if they're in different platforms. You're just having different tabs. You just improved the UX, but you didn't really solve the real issue behind, which is on email I can invite anyone to participate in any conversation. I don't care if they are on Gmail or Outlook or Apple. Um, so I think that should be the final goal. Obviously, to get there, it's you need a strategy and steps, and getting a server that can talk those different languages and bridge on the server level, and even be this switch, this hub for messaging between different platforms. It's the first step, and building then the protocol where those different servers to talk to each other, which is you look at all the things that SMTP got right, all the things that XMPP got right, and then you try to learn and understand all the things that they got stuck with because they had legacy decisions that didn't allow them to evolve, and this can allow you to write what is the next version of the federation protocol that allows multiple nodes on the internet to exchange messages in real time and not create spam, or to be people are certain that the message was delivered, that there is a proof of sender and signature. There is maybe we even think can there be a, and then putting blockchain together, there can there be a cost attributed to sending and receiving messages, or like we talked about this in some of our brainstorms. Like, imagine if you have to spend some sort of token every time you send a message, and then you receive the token every time you receive that kind of message. So you create an incentive for people to kind of balance the amount of people message that they received and sent. Uh, how much less span maybe you'd get from companies that would just like blast out, or even if they're blast out, then at least you're making some money out of receiving
Yeah,
their
that would
email
be
or whatever.
beautiful. A fully authenticated, non-spammy messaging interconnected omni-channel layer. It's a mouthful, but when 88% of all email in the world is spam, because spam is so cheap, right? All you have to do is because
Yes,
and it's a way for you to. There's no protection layer. If I
you
email
should
you,
add a layer like economic value on sending an email. Like, okay, even if it's like a couple of cents or something, but the normal human, they'll probably like would even out. So I don't care. Like I would like spend $10 and get $10, and on my day I'll have got into a cash flow neutral. But it would make hard for company that they would think twice before blasting you if they had to spend 10 cents for each person they want to reach
that's right.
every time they want to send an email or something like this.
Yeah,
So,
and
uh,
and, I, and also the switching part. Although like kind of like being the ability of like, hey, a customer message you on your website, and you receive a message inside Rocket.Chat that you can respond, and that posts back into a WhatsApp channel because whatever, that's the best setup that they have, and the fact that you guys can do that is extremely powerful. And then